everybody. Ezra Levant here for Rebel News. I'm in Ottawa at the continuing trial of Tamara Lich and her co-defendant, Chris Barber. Behind me, if you can see it, that brutalist building is the very ugly Ottawa Courts building. So instead, I'm going to turn around and have a prettier piece of architecture. There is some gorgeous buildings in Ottawa, so let's look at that instead. In court, I came a little bit early, and I saw Chris Barber arrive with his lawyers, and I saw Tamara Lich arrive with her lawyers. Had a little bit of a chat with them as they came in, and then I went in. The trial was scheduled for 10 a.m., but it got off to a slow start and then immediately was bogged down in sort of procedural housekeeping issues. And I started to think, I thought this trial would be sort of humming along smoothly now, as it's been going on for more than 2 weeks. But I realized what a mess it's been. How the prosecution, because they switched Crown prosecutors on this case a few months ago. For the first year, the prosecution was led by an absolutely maniacal, vendetta-driven prosecutor named Moise Karimji, who was so hot-tempered and foul-mooded that I think the Justice Department said, we're going to lose it simply by virtue of this guy's atrocious personality. And so just a few months ago, they sacked Moise Karimji as the prosecutor and put in a new team. But of course, the bulk of the Crown's case had been done. So these new lawyers, who, from what I can tell, are sort of normal prosecutors, not motivated by a crazy ideological vendetta. I'm not saying that casually. Moise Karimji, senior donor to the Liberals, just a crazy blogger, tweeter, really a communist. And, it showed good judgment by the Justice Department to knock him off the case. But, the cake was half baked. And now you've got these two new prosecutors trying to salvage it. It doesn't look good. The Democracy Fund and Rebel News have crowdfunded literally thousands of court cases for people charged with various offenses during the pandemic, during the lockdowns. And hundreds of them have simply been dropped or stayed or withdrawn by the prosecution because there was nothing there. The tickets were issued by police who were being overly aggressive. The laws were poorly thought through and maybe were unconstitutional. Or, on review, it just wasn't worth the government's time to prosecute and to have judges. So for whatever reason, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of cases have been dropped without trial. And Tamara Lich's case is obviously one such case. I mean, inciting mischief or whatever. And it's just so laughable that you would have two prosecutors, a judge, and dozens and dozens and dozens of days in court set aside for an incitement to mischief trial. If it weren't for the political reputation and the fact that the Crown and the prosecutors and Trudeau doesn't want to lose face, this would be one of the hundreds of cases that was withdrawn or abandoned, just like the no-name cases around the country. The only reason this prosecution is proceeding is because Tamara Lich is famous and because so many politicians have demonized her, so they have to see it through. I actually feel slightly sorry for the prosecutors who have to make that work. I don't think it's working, and that was very quickly evident to me. This trial is sort of broken. And I think this is the third witness, and it's been more than 2 weeks, and the government says they have 20 more witnesses, and if it continues at this laughable pace, this will be a trial that takes the rest of the year. And, there's a judgment call the prosecutors have to make. Is there a reasonable likelihood of conviction? I'm not sure if that's here. Judging from the witness just sort of rambling on about his personal feelings of the lockdown and the convoy, I don't know if they have a case against her. But the second test is it in the public interest? And there is a serious judge on the bench here. She was the same judge that oversaw the prosecution of Vice Admiral Mark Norman. You might remember that case from a few years back. He did something to cross Justin Trudeau. So Trudeau whipped up a case, basically tried to frame Mark Norman, and there was this whole trial, and then there was some prosecutorial misconduct that was discovered halfway through the trial, and so there was a very speedy dismissal, and the government was humiliated. They apologized. I think they paid his legal fees. This same judge oversaw that. So what I like about that is this judge knows the kind of political BS that is sometimes in this town. And there is simply no way that she can't detect that same BS here in this case. And what I want to point out is that the witness who I did listen to this witness. His name was Kim Ayotte. He's a city manager for Ottawa in charge of emergency things. So yes, he was involved with the city's response to the convoy. Absolutely. But he testified today that he never once had any interactions with Tamara Lich. Never once. I don't think he's ever met her to this day. He had a brief interaction with Chris Barber, the co-defendant, but it was all about how to keep lines of communication open between the city and the truckers and how to move some trucks away from residential areas to other places. So it was actually a very positive interaction, if I understood his testimony. But for half an hour today, he described a walkabout he did. He just went for a walk. And he went on this street and that street, and he saw this truck, and he saw that bouncy castle. And the whole time I'm thinking, okay, I'm ready for your point. Okay, this is a trial of two people who are charged with a very specific criminal charge. You have to prove certain elements of the charge, what they did. I'm ready for it. I'm waiting for it. And it never came. It just never came. And he's been going for 2 or 3 days now. And he's just sort of meandering. It reminded me of that TV show. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. What We Do in the Shadows. It's a vampire comedy. And it's a very obscure, quirky comedy. And they have these vampires who speak with European accents, and it's very funny. But there's this character in this comedy called Colin Robinson, and they always call him by his first name and last name. And he doesn't look like a vampire at all. He calls himself an energy vampire. And he's just the kind of person that maybe you know of in your office who is just so irritating and speaks so slowly and just says things that you find frustrating. So this character in this comedy, Colin Robinson, is an energy vampire. Here's a quick clip to show you what I'm talking about.
Are we having a house meeting?
No.
No.
So your gathering here is just a coincidence?
Yes.
I am what's known as a psychic vampire or energy vampire. Energy vampires drain people's energy merely by talking to them.
Actual versus budget year to date? No thanks. You're gonna be at that all day.
The power grows stronger in him by the night.
I'm just gonna do a quick mega feed, and then I'll be right
Mr.
back.
Robinson, are you here?
I'm holding up a finger indicating to hold on a second.
I'll be right back.
Yeah.
EV. EV. Emotional vamp. Oh, hell. It's on, Evie Russell. Oh, it's on. I like your skirt. You should be careful because mauve attracts bees.
I was wearing this skirt when my sister got her cancer diagnosis.
Cancer isn't usually what kills you. It's the treatment.
She was killed by a drunk driver. He was my fiance.
Violence often begins at home. Studies indicate.
I've never had a home.
We don't have to be enemies.
Have you ever considered hunting with a partner?
The thought has only recently crossed my mind.
It is an eclipse.
What is that?
Hey, dudes. It's me, Colin Robinson, your roommate.
Colin Robinson.
Yeah, Guillermo's here, too. He was running around peeing himself.
I didn't pee myself, master.
I was walking by this hardware store, and I says to myself, Colin, you should go in and see if they have any umbrellas for the well. Made sure to keep the receipt. I'm going to probably take it back. You can do that on non-food items.
Is he zapping our
energy?
He's taking advantage of us.
You can always return.
Shut up.
Do you not want me to say? I'll go.
No!
Just giving you guys guff.
Yeah, that's what I thought of when I saw Kim Ayotte and I walked down this street and I walked down that street and I saw a bouncy castle and they were dancing and that was illegal. He literally said it was illegal to dance in Ottawa without a permit. And at that point, the judge herself just had to weigh in and said, are you serious? But what's crazy to me is this guy's just rambling on. And they've got 20 odd more witnesses to go. They're just going to ramble. I don't even know what they're gonna say. because this is not a trial of the whole convoy. This is a trial of two individual people, most famously Tamara Lich. And this guy has never met or talked to or texted or interacted with Tamara Lich. And even as he was saying, when I walked down the street, but I didn't gather evidence, I just did it as for observations. Well, if you just said you gathered no evidence, if you didn't take notes, if nothing, why are you giving evidence if you just said you didn't collect evidence? And the evidence is just a general complaint about the truckers. You heard some honking. We know that, Walter Cronkite. We know. Thanks for the news update. There was honking. We know that. Can you please tell me how that goes to the criminal charge of inciting mischief of Tamara Lich? And I don't know how long this judge is going to let this go, because she's a busy woman, a serious woman. There are serious matters in this court to deal with. There are real crimes in this city. There are people in prison awaiting their trial. There are real matters afoot. And to give such prosecutorial resources to this laughable case, I thought, am I wrong here? I don't practice law. I'm a former lawyer, but I don't practice law. Do I really know these things? But I spoke to two lawyers who said, yeah, this is crazy. And then I walked in, and there was a lady who introduced herself to me and said she's been coming every day. And I said, well, you certainly must have a lot of patience if you're coming back every day. And she said that she's a former court reporter, like the stenographer who has to listen to all this stuff. And she says she's never seen anything like it. Let me tell you one more anecdote. I used to know a senior lawyer who practiced defamation law, and he said he was never afraid of the defamation notices that were 20 pages long. He said he was afraid of the ones that were 1 or 2 sentences long. He said, because if someone's complaining about one specific thing, odds are they got you. But if they need 20 pages to tell you why you're wrong, odds are they got nothing. And that's what I was thinking about today. They've got more than 20 witnesses about how Tamara Lich is guilty, but I'm not sure if any of them have ever even met her. They're just telling these rambling stories like Colin Robinson, the energy vampire, and they're just going on and on and on. And it reminds me of what that senior lawyer said. If you've got the goods, you only need a few sentences. The very fact that they need 24 witnesses says they don't have anything. And I think it's a sham that this continues this long. I did notice that the judge was starting to lose her patience, and I just can't imagine that she will allow this abomination of a prosecution to continue for the 80 days that will be needed if they stay on this page. I just can't believe that. And I hope that her experience in the Mark Norman case will inform her dealings in this case. Anyway, I'm enjoying being in court. I like live tweeting. You know me. I was just the other day in court in Lethbridge for Arthur Pavlovsky's case. I love typing as fast as my fingers will fly. I love paying close attention to what the lawyers say and what the judges. I really enjoy it, but I can't say I'm enjoying this because there's nothing there. It's like a fog machine. This guy, Kim Ayotte, he wasn't saying anything. There was nothing to type. And so I was just left with my own mockery and cynical thoughts on the whole thing. I can only imagine what people who have to pay attention, like the lawyers and the judge, are thinking. We heard from that former court reporter. Anyways, it's lunch break now, so I'll be back after lunch.
Hi there. The trial is over for the day, but it will go on for many weeks, maybe even many months. It is going at a snail's pace. I have to say, listening to this city bureaucrat testify today, it was excruciating. And I'm not just talking about his tone of voice and his vagueness and his evasiveness. He literally had nothing to say about Tamara Lich. The words Tamara Lich only came up once in the entire day when he confirmed he had never met her, spoken to her, emailed her, texted her. He literally knows nothing about Tamara Lich, and yet she is on trial here. He meandered and talked about all of his deepest thoughts, his personal feelings about the lockdown. At one point, he talked about going for a walk to observe things, but not to collect evidence. Well, why is he giving evidence on that? Lawrence Greenspan, the lawyer for Tamara Lich, the lead lawyer, there's 3 of them, cross-examined Ayotte, and I didn't understand what was the point of it. I mean, Ayotte really had nothing of substance to say, but what became clear to me is that Greenspan was proving that everything the truckers did when they came into Ottawa was approved by the Ottawa Police Service. Here, listen to what he said in a scrum a moment ago about how what route they took, where they parked, what they did was all approved by the Ottawa Police. Take a look. You tell me if this is outside the scope of what you feel comfortable answering. I listened to the day's testimony by Kim Ayotte, and I don't know how it touches on the guilt or not guilt of the two accused. It sounds like he's just talking about the convoy. Help me out here.
Well, I can't really help you out. That's the job of the Crown, is to tie the evidence of this witness and the other ones that have been called and will be called in support of their charges. That's the Crown's job. And they've got to do it beyond a reasonable doubt. And the only time you heard Tamara Lich's name today was that he had absolutely no contact with her. So,
at what point do you object, or does the judge say, look, we just can't rehash the whole commission of inquiry? We've got to talk about the two accused sitting in the dock.
Well, it's completely a different matter. I mean, what the commission was looking at is, as you know, is the propriety of imposing the Emergency Measures Act, and what we're talking about here is a trial on very specific charges for Tamara and for Chris.
Do you see how that's important? If the Ottawa police were working cooperatively with the truckers and approved everything the truckers did, how is that mischief? In fact, one of the most interesting things was that the Ottawa police said to the city bylaw officers, don't issue any tickets without our approval because we've got an agreement here. Look at Lawrence Greenspan say that in the scrum. Let me ask you, what does it mean when the city was not permitted to ticket without the approval of the police? What's the meaning of that?
Well, it's you heard Mr. Ayotte say that the city basically was under the direction of the Ottawa Police Service, and that the Ottawa Police Service was completely responsible for operations. And the City of Ottawa Police told bylaw basically, you don't ticket in the red zone unless you have our approval, and they didn't.
What does that mean, though? What's the political or the import to your clients? I guess that's for us to figure out.
Stay tuned.
I like Lawrence Greenspan. He's a smart lawyer, and he's got patience, and he's got an attention span, which he's going to need if this is indeed going to go on for weeks or months. But what I don't understand is how it could do so. Look, I understand the prosecution has an empty gas tank here. I understand they want to throw everything at this in the hope that something sticks. And I understand that they are being pushed to do so by their political masters. Justin Trudeau, the police, the mayors, everyone has demonized Tamara Lich, so they have to push on with this prosecution even if it has no legal basis. But does the court have to listen to it? And do the prosecutors have to continue on even if they themselves come to believe that there is no reasonable prospect of conviction and that there really isn't any public interest in it? It's very interesting. I have to say this. I will not be back at this trial if this is how it goes. I'm delighted that I have colleagues with bigger attention spans than myself, but I simply can't bear listening to these, I'm going to swear here, to these bullshitters, these bureaucrats, these people who have nothing to say about Tamara Lich because they never interacted with her. I don't give a care about what Kim Ayotte, some city bureaucrat, has to say in slow motion for hour after hour after hour, his personal reflections. And I heard a horn honk, and I went for a walk, and I saw a bouncy castle. I don't care. This isn't a therapy session. This isn't a Dear Diary. This is a criminal trial of Tamara Lich and her co-defendant, Chris Barber. And the two of them were barely mentioned today. I think Lawrence Greenspan is doing a good job by proving that what little Kim Ayotte has to say proves that the convoy was actually lawful. So I think he's done a good job in that. But I myself don't have patience for 80 more days of fog. And this is actually a disgrace to the prosecution. You know, in this city in recent weeks, there have been murders, there have been shootings. There was a shooting at a funeral in this town. And in this court, police sit and they wait to testify to talk about a trucker convoy that we all know what happened. They're sitting in here countless hours and countless days to come. I've seen enough to know that this is a political trial, a show trial, a sham trial. There is no public interest here. If Tamara Lich was not famous, this matter would have been withdrawn or stayed months ago. I think what happened is an out-of-control, maniacal prosecutor named Moise Kashimji put this train in motion. He scared his own bosses that they pulled him off the file and handed it to two slightly less maniacal prosecutors, but they're stuck with it. And I think they feel compelled to see it through because it would lose too much face for them to pull out now. But I say this, I have never been as confident as I am now that Tamara Lich will be acquitted. And even watching this judge slowly lose her patience with the BS of these government witnesses is an amazing thing to see. Every person in this courtroom is getting paid, by the way. The judge, the prosecutors, these government bureaucrats who are testifying, every person except for Tamara Lich and her husband, because the process is the punishment. I think maybe that's it. Maybe the reason the prosecution is calling dozens of witnesses who will take months to go through is simply that this is the sentence. They know she'll be acquitted. They know she'll be vindicated. They know that I think it's 52 days in prison now or 49 days in prison that she served is punishment for a crime she did not commit. So they know that she's going to walk free at the end of this trial, so they're going to make the trial itself the punishment. Taxpayers are being punished along the way, and every other justice-seeking Ottawan, everyone else in this city who says, can I please have some policing for a real crime? They are being taken advantage of too. And yeah, that's my report from here in Ottawa. Maybe I have too short an attention span and I should be listening rapturously when this city bureaucrat gives us his personal take on what it felt like to hear the horns honking. But frankly, I don't give a damn. Luckily, I've got colleagues who will be here to report on the rest of the trial. It's a very important trial for us to do.